So the job here is to replace this wheel nut that broke off. First step is to take the brake off, this brake pad on the left here, the assembly. So as you can see, there's a bolt back there, the center one. I want to take that off, and then there's one on the bottom that you need to take off as well. It's a 17 millimeter. I'll take that off and see that hanging up there in a minute. So I'm taking two small bungees and hung this off the spring to keep any pressure off the brake line right there. Next step, take off those two screws and pop off the rest of that. You can see the screw in the bottom, and there was a screw in the top. I ended up having to get a manual impact driver wrench to get that out. So what you do is you put this on right there, you pound that out, turning it to the left. This will go in and pull left with about 200 foot-pounds of torque with this particular Craftsman one. That's how I got the top one out. The bottom one's being a little bit more trouble, so turn off the video and try again. Finally got the last screw out of there. Really had to beat on that. I ended up using a propane torch here to get some heat on that bolt as well. And what ended up happening was this broke loose from the screw initially. And then I was able to get the screw out with the impact driver. So at this point, we can just work off the rotor, the disc. Off it comes. So the next step is to raise that stake. So I'm just going to fit a screwdriver in there and slowly work it up. Turn the inside wheel as I was trying to break that off. So as you can see, I ran into a little bit of trouble here. I ended up having to put the wheel back on because it kept slipping, trying to put some pressure on the CV joint so it wouldn't spin. I did not put the brakes back on when I did that. I just put the wheel right on. And ended up using an 18-inch breaker bar. So here's our 18-inch breaker bar, and I attached to it another 15-inch pipe extension. Sat on it with my full weight, and then had someone else push me to break this loose. And then once it came loose, it was pretty much twist out. So see how that turns there. You need a new one of these bolts if you break that stake out. I think technically by the book you're supposed to have a new one anyway. So the next step is to remove the ABS sensor that you can see right down there. My car's got plenty of miles on it, so when I popped off the 10 millimeter screw in there, I ended up having to pull for that, and as you can see, I broke the ABS sensor off because it's all rusted apart inside. So that's a project for after I get the knuckle off. So the step we're working on now is to take the rest of the knuckle off. We're going on to the bottom of it to take off the pin down here, that one right there, pop off that control arm, so the bottom portion of the knuckle can come off. I got the cotter pin out of the control arm there. All you need is a flathead screwdriver and it'll pop right out. Can't seem to get a socket in there to take off the control arm nut, so I'm going to go up here to the upper tie rod and take that off first, and then see if that opens up the area at all. The CV joint down there is blocking any kind of access for a socket and a socket wrench. So I've given up on trying to break this apart. Per the book, it says that ball joints should be removed using a ball joint remover, specifically a Honda one. This is actually an OTC one. It's about $35 versus the $250 Honda version. There we go. As you can see, it popped off. It's quite a bit of force I had to put on there, but now that just moves right around. I'm a little surprised at how well it was on top of that. Goes in and out without a problem now, but there was really no bang or force that could have popped it off short of this OTC tool right here. I'm going to use a box wrench to pull that out there. Just about done with this one. The next step is to remove the ball joint from the lower control arm. I'll use the ball joint separator just like I did for the tie rod. See, I've got the ball joint remover attached on the back side of the control arm here. It was pretty tight getting it in there, but you can work it inside there on top of that boot on the bottom, and then ultimately just crank it off. So give that a shot. Got it pretty tight here. I'm gonna try a few turns on this and see if I can crank it off while the video's going. You want to keep your hand fairly clear of that on the bottom. I'm not sure how fast that's going to come flying off. Got to crank the control or the tie rod arm pretty far to get that to pop. Sounds like it. Yep. Alright. Try to continue to get this video here. Pull that back off. I'm assuming it's going to come down. Come up pretty easily here. There you go, it's moving. Work on getting that out in a minute. There you go, so the lower A arm is, or control arm is muscled out right there. It looks like some of the goo from the boot may have come out, so we're going to have to take a look at that and see if the boot needs replaced. You can see with that control arm off that this moves quite a bit more freely here. The next step is to remove these two bolts up here, which should free the entire knuckle from that CV joint and allow us to finally get to the wheel hub, which we've been trying to get to. Since the wheel hub will be out, I'll likely replace the wheel bearing at the same time. I'll, of course, to replace that singular wheel nut right there that's broken. Both of those bolts there are 19s. So I just used the deep well on the right hand side because it was a little bit tough getting in there. Backed it off till it was about hand tight, and used a crescent wrench on the other side to just hold that in place while I pulled it. So I'm just going to take those off now by hand. That should free the entire knuckle at this point. Point a note on these bolts here. It is fairly specific in the Honda instructions that once you pull those off, you're going to want to replace them with brand new ones. So I'll probably do that, and I'll have a little parts inventory of everything I'm gonna replace based on what I did here today. There we go, that's a better look at that. Pretty easily right off to the side for me. There we go. Comes pretty much right out now. There we go. That's the knuckle. The rest of the wheel hub and assembly with it. Objective complete for the time being. Next step is to get the ABS sensor out, or the wheel speed sensor. I've seen a lot of people have to use like an easy out to drill it out, but instead I'm going to try to pound it out with this here. As you can see, I'm working on the ABS wheel sensor. It used to be further in onto the other side, but I tapped it through a very small amount, and then I ended up using these Craftsman screw extractors. The one that's missing is the one that's in the drill. I think it's the number 1, and I drilled into that, kind of drilled it around. I drilled it in the direction instead of drilling straight and pull it right back out, but I wasn't pulling this out very well with a threaded bit on it, so I kind of drilled it in, moved it around, and then ultimately it came out to be about that much. I was able to work it out of there. And you can see how it's crumpled on the bottom and how it's all rusty, so you can imagine why it was in there. Took me a fairly good time to get this set up. So I just had a hard time figuring out where to put these spacers and blocks to press this through. I was not able to punch it through, but we're gonna give this a shot and see if this 12-ton press is able to break that free. Took a lot of pressure. At the end, you can see how these wedges kind of rocked up on the sides, but ultimately I kept pushing a little bit out of frustration, and the wheel hub appears to have come loose, and now I'm just working it out there. There it goes. That's the inside of it. Those are the ball bearings. Here's the wheel hub. So this was pressed together, and when I popped it out of the press, it came out like that, just to show the how it's supposed to look. Alright, so we're going to take the snap ring off. It's pretty easy. Continuing to press it. Watch closely, you can see the device going down. I assume that noise, man, we broke free the bearing. Alright, we'll check on it right about there. Here's the one side. You can see that where we were pressing it, it's definitely down there more. I'm going to flip this over here. Now on that side, you can see that the bearing is right up flush against that. So we're going to figure out how to get that bearing the rest of the way out now. As it happens, this particular hydraulic press happens to have a space just large enough to drop that bearing out, it would appear. So I've carefully balanced this here, which is likely not recommended, but I'm going to give it a try anyway to see if I can't pop that bearing out. Trying a slightly different approach here. Feels like we're slowly pushing it out, just checking underneath. Yep, I can feel it below. Try holding this. Here's the wheel bearing and the wheel hub taken apart. So this is what I pressed out of the knuckle. So you can see the wheels in there. That's because the other half of this is actually sitting right here, the inner race. So it would have gone on like that, pressed all the way down. So the final step is to somehow get this off. I've cleaned this up enough so you can kind of see the lip in there. So we're taking apart the wheel hub here to break the bearing race off the wheel hub. Just pick this up at Harbor Freight.